Hi, my name's Phil and I'm talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to touch on the issue of British performers struggling to tour Europe because of our unnecessarily extreme Tory Brexit. David Frost, our unelected cabinet minister in charge of Brexit, was yesterday answering questions. Now, he was evading questions from MPs, and I'd like to discuss a few of them. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, yes, Brexit was all about ending freedom of movement, apparently. Didn't see that one on the referendum ballot. Seemed to have missed it on the bus as well. Didn't even see it in any Vote Leave literature or even anything from leave.eu or other significant campaign. But apparently that's what it meant. End of freedom of movement. Oh, for us, not for Europeans. Theirs has barely been touched. They get to carry on wandering Europe as they did before, and some have to watch out in Britain. I say some because obviously we've granted settled status to millions of EU citizens, and we're going to have to do something to grant freedom of movement to many more. After all, we're suffering crippling staff shortages in logistics, in hospitality, in retail at the very least. These problems are not going to be solved without changes to our shiny new immigration rules. And this is to say nothing of the staff shortages in the NHS. So either the rules go or the economy does. And in the week where an Iron Maiden band member complained that, yes, he supported Brexit, but he didn't mean that he should have to suffer from the consequences, one of, I'm sure, just a small number of prominent performers who did so. I mean, there were a few who backed Brexit and are now fuming that Brexit means Brexit. A couple are personally fine because they have Irish passports, but that didn't help their wider support members, and it knackers their industry in general, particularly badly if you're just starting out and need to tour to get yourself noticed. And David Frost was supposed to be answering MPs' questions. Now, bear in mind that recently he's admitted that the withdrawal agreement that he negotiated was a load of rubbish and never should have been signed, that his trade and cooperation agreement also had glaring holes in it, bit of a shambles there, and that he didn't actually understand the consequences of leaving the EU, even though he's still in charge of leading the rest of us through the process. What I'm basically saying is, don't get your hopes up that he had any answers that were useful to the industry or indeed anyone. You know, they were simply instructive in letting us know just how badly boned we are. Because this is for one industry. There's absolutely no reason to suppose he isn't equally clueless for all the others. He was asked, for example, if touring was seen as an immigration or a trade issue. Now, I thought that was a really good question because, like so many things in government, you need to know whose responsibility something is before anyone will do anything about it. You might imagine to yourself, well, it doesn't really matter. The government need to deal with it as if the government is this like thing. The government is lots of different departments. You know, is it an immigration issue, in which case Priti Patel needs to look at it? Or is it a trade issue, in which case Liz Truss needs to look at it? He didn't seem to have an answer to that, which means regardless of anything else that came from this hearing, this is not an issue that's going to be dealt with, because to deal with it, you need ministerial input. You need a policy decision. Which minister needs to look at it? If you don't know which department needs to be involved, it will not find its way into the in-tray of anyone who can make that policy decision. Frost's role, he's a cabinet minister, unelected, of course, but Frost's role is to discuss solutions to problems with the EU. He can't actually do anything really at our end other than spend money, you know, or damage trust in our country with his nonsense, because he's the person we allow to talk to foreign governments. It's a stunningly bad idea if you ask me. But then what are the alternatives? Dominic Raab or Boris Johnson? Naturally, he was asked why we didn't accept the EU's offer of a visa waiver last year, to which Frost responded that he didn't want it. Really sure. I mean, the industry wanted it. Does it matter what he wants? And when referring to Elton John's involvement, who has been scathing about the situation, Frost basically said that any performers who are having problems lack talent. Your problem's not Brexit, it's that you're talentless. Not really even stretching a point there. He tried to say, with regard to Sir Elton John, well, Sir Elton had his biggest hits before the formation of the EU and that talent is important. So what he's basically saying is, well, he managed before the EU And talent is important. Therefore, if you're having problems now that we're out of the EU, it's because you've not got enough talent. And here's another common Brexit fallacy, which I suppose I can't really bash Frost for too much because he's already admitted he didn't understand what leaving the EU meant. But Europe is no longer like it was before the EU. The EU brought European countries together into a tight club. So we can't just bob around the continent like we did before it existed because all the rules have changed. Now, I don't know if Frost is deliberately playing dumb here or really is ignorant. Doesn't really matter. People in general need to stop with this. Oh, it was okay before we joined crap. I mean, it wasn't okay, but the world has moved on since the 1960s, if you're talking about, early 70s when we joined the EC. And the world has formed closer ties with its neighbours, largely as a result of the European project being so successful. But what that has meant is more barriers to those who choose to be on the outside of those clubs. Because what's the benefit of being in the club? You get special benefits. So the way they've sort of done that is to erect special trade barriers to everyone else. So being on the inside looks more attractive. We have chosen to be on the outside. We have chosen to be a third country with respect to our most important market by far. That has more consequences now than it did half a century ago. The issue of logistics was also raised, cabotage, because performers struggling to get visas to work in Europe is only one thing that's screwing them. Even if they sorted that out, let's say we'd sorted that out, they still can't tour, because if they can't get their equipment transported around the various venues, it's still impossible. The industry wants a special exemption for the creative industries, for transport. It's a huge industry. It generates a hell of a lot of income for the country. We should know this. Our top performers are household names around the world. And it goes all the way down the pyramid. It's something we're quite good at, and we've completely stuffed it. And the industry lobbied for this last year as well. In fact, you could tell how badly the eventual deal was going to fail because almost everyone from lots of different industries were all asking for special exemptions for themselves. They'd given up saying to the government, no, we need this, we need this, we need this. They'd given up on that and said, right, you're determined to be insane. Can we at least have an exemption for us? It was clear that we were gunning for a hard Brexit, so as many people as possible tried to get themselves made a special case. But Boris Johnson and David Frost were having none of it. We promised to screw over our own country, and by heavens, that's what we're going to do, they seemed to say. Frost also tried to push the line that various sectors of the economy were coming up with solutions and dealing with difficulties. Well, yeah, but they aren't solving those difficulties. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making such a fuss still. And they're also saying that they're just hanging on because the pandemic has not yet exposed the full impact. At the end of the day, you can't freely move around Europe anyway, not just because of Brexit, because of the pandemic. They've not worked anything out that will solve the issues that will arise once everyone else can move around Europe. When the movement is permitted with post-pandemic rules, but for us, still hampered by Brexit. Frost also tried to argue that he was aware of the serious cabotage issues for transport, but we ran out of time. That's not true. That's just a lie. We didn't run out of time. We chose to end things when we did. The clock ended when we said it should end. Nobody else forced us to end it when we did, or even encouraged us to do so. We could have extended. We chose not to. So we didn't run out of time. That one needed sorting there and then. We didn't run out of time. We stopped the clock because we couldn't be asked. He also said that he only realised how the creative sector would be impacted in November, which in itself is another stunning admission of complete incompetence. How a few weeks before you concluded things, were you only just aware how a huge part of our economy was affected? But I also thought it was a little odd because I remember reading about it much sooner than that. I mean, I know I read a lot about Brexit matters, but surely David Frost has more professional need and opportunity to do so than me. He was later asked what the Brexit benefits for this sector were. Did he name any? Behave yourself. But better than not being able to come up with any. Other than he tried, he said he pointed to an agreement with EFTA countries, but that's still less than what we had when we were in the EU. So that's not a Brexit anything, much less a benefit. He also said it's not in our hands. You what, mate? Not in our hands. I think he misunderstands what the term means. See, not in our hands, for those who may not be aware of it, is a phrase that's usually used widely in the UK. I thought widely around the world, quite frankly, in the English-speaking world. But it's a phrase that means we have no control over the situation, see? But we took back control by leaving the EU. So he can't have meant it in that way. Unfortunately, the MPs were a little bit remiss. Nobody asked him to clarify what he meant by the statement, because he was clearly using it incorrectly. Because we've taken back control, how can anything be out of our hands? So I'm afraid it's going to have to remain a mystery there. So he was then asked what we can do to improve the situation. Again, a good question, right? You've waffled yourself through this nonsense. You can't tell me which government department needs to deal with this issue, so you're not going to deal with it. So what can we do to help as MPs? What can we do to help? You know, what can be done to improve the situation? Surely a nice, easy one. He must have gone to that meeting knowing ideally what he would like, because anyone can have an idea about how a situation will be helped, even if it's not realistic, even if it relies upon people doing something that's not in their best interest. At least have a plan. What can we do to help? There's no answer there either. He just said it would be helpful if industry bodies helped. I mean, aren't they? Like, I don't think the industry bodies are actually just stand there going, right, well, it was nice while it lasted. We're just going to all collapse. They've been trying to deal with the situation. He said earlier that they'd been trying to deal with the situation, so I'm not sure. Also, I mean, basically what he's saying, in other words, is where Brexit is failing hard, it's not the government's fault for delivering it, and it's not his fault for being clueless about what leaving the EU meant. It's all our fault for not helping, as he puts it. Even though he couldn't actually give an example of the sort of help he wants. I mean, what help do you... Give me an example of some help. No? Oh, all right then. So yeah, somewhat useless, but another reminder of just how much of a mess we are in. Because this is beyond Brexit just being a stunningly bad idea. Back in 2016, it was a stunningly bad idea because there were no benefits that would not be drowned out by the massive downsides. That was it. That was the argument. But now it's worse than that, because there are some consequences of Brexit that are unnecessary. Even with a hard Brexit, there are some consequences of even a hard Brexit that we are suffering that we didn't need to, and we certainly didn't vote for. But we're suffering all the bonus consequences because of a combination of a blinkered Brexit mindset that is not what was promised, and I don't just mean in the referendum, I even mean in 2019. A pig-headed stubbornness, which is really not going to work in international negotiations, and a complete lack of even the slightest clue about how the EU or the single market works. That is what is so dispiriting. They do not have the foggiest idea how the single market works, because what they actually are trying to do doesn't work with it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.